What's up, board fam? Eric here, and you guys have been asking me to debunk SnarkyJ. It's taken me a minute to get to the channel, but I finally have the opportunity to do it today, and we're going to be looking at a video where SnarkyJ is talking about Disney and girl bosses. This is an old chestnut for these channels. We've heard all these arguments before. I don't think there's going to be anything new that she's going to express here, so this should be a pretty easy and simple debunk, but we're going to see if she brings anything new to the table simply because she is a channel that we haven't really watched in the past. This is something you guys asked for me to do, so let's go ahead and get into this debunk. If you're going to enjoy this video and the kind of content I'm making over here, make sure you hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. With that being said, let's watch SnarkyJ.
In the modern era, all Disney women are strong and independent and don't need anybody. But what I'm wondering is how they lost their way this hard when they used to write absolute classics. Hey y'all, SnarkyJ cosplay here. In a time of Mary Sue's and girl bossery, it's really hard to not blame this sudden shift in female characters on companies like Disney, who seem to produce exclusively these strong girl boss types that are just better than everybody around them and aren't afraid to say it. But
okay, so this is, again, we've heard this argument before, that all modern Disney women are strong, independent, and they don't need anybody. Now, this is a sweeping generalization. It's a very common tactic that these channels use, and it sets up what you would consider a false binary. We've talked about these before when we've done Eric July videos, where there's this concept that there's only one of two things that could possibly happen. Is old Disney equals good and new Disney equals bad, leaving no room for any sort of like wiggles in there where things could be different or slightly askew from what they were previously. Now, starting out also, there's no examples. It is simply a vibe establishment. That's what SnarkyJ is doing here. She's setting up a vibe. And the reason why this is wrong is modern Disney women, let's use a few examples here. So like Elsa. Elsa is literally defined by emotional vulnerability, isolation being a flaw of the character, of her character. Moana succeeds primarily because of her community, ancestors, and Maui. We have Mirabelle from Encanto. Zero powers and wins through empathy and family, you know, dealing with issues with her family. These aren't Mary Sue's or Girlboss tropes. And these are all films that I think most people would consider to be more modern Disney. So starting out claiming that all modern Disney women are the same sounds bold, but as you can see, it collapses instantly when you name a few recent films. These characters fail, doubt themselves, rely on others. They're emotionally wrecked half the time. So it's not really a critique, it's more of a slogan. This is like a slogan thing for these guys when they're making this kind of content. Let's continue with this.
one of the things that I have a huge problem with when it comes to Disney in this aspect is not just that they mistake complexity for a flaw and strength to be the only quality valuable in women, but the fact that Disney used to be one of the best at writing complex female characters, and they totally flattened what was once quiet, admirable strength and changed that out for emotional invulnerability and I don't need anyone attitude and nothing but girl boss behavior. Disney, for as feminist as it tries to be, seems to have forgotten that the basic human quality of women is that we are also people. But Disney...
Okay, we're going to stop it there for a second. It's a lot of buzzwords being used here. Mary Sue, girl boss, and there's no real definition for it. We've talked about this before, the differences between a Mary Sue and a girl boss, but these terms are interchanged when you're using them in culture war because it doesn't matter what they mean anymore. It just matters that this person is saying them. She's just saying these words, and therefore everyone that watches her video should just immediately understand that those words mean something negative. They're pejoratives in this community. And she's claiming here that Disney rejects complexity while also complaining that Disney builds movies around internal conflict, which is complex, right? And then of course there's a straw man about Disney thinking that vulnerability, is equals weakness, providing no true evidence for that. There's just none. So calling characters Mary Sues and girl bosses without defining those terms is just a way to skip any intellectual analysis of the videos that are being made, any of these videos where these terms are used. If a character has doubts, fails, hurts people physically, emotionally, if they ever need help, if any of these things exist, then they're not a Mary Sue. They're just not. These things are actually antithetical to what a Mary Sue is. And so without using examples, you can just throw around the words Girlboss and Mary Sue, and people just, again, immediately think negative thoughts. Let's continue with the video.
Disney takes one look at a woman and goes, oh my god, if we make her anything but an absolute badass, Twitter is gonna light our on fire. In this video, we're gonna take a look back at some of the best women Disney has ever written. And
oh, this should be good. So we are gonna try and use some examples. I can't wait to hear what she has to say about that. Let's continue.
Analyze how the we got so far from them. And what I want to acknowledge is that this isn't nostalgia blindness. This isn't me looking fondly back over my childhood and missing the somehow quiet misogynistic parts that I failed to understand because I was a kid. I am emotionally stunted. I watch Disney movies all the time. I have very clear ideas of who these characters are. I very much have a clear understanding of the shift that Disney has made in writing women from way back in the day to now, with characters like, you know, Captain Marvel and my favorite, Rey No Name Palpatine Skywalker.
Let's pause it there for a second. I want to go back a moment and talk about the concept that Twitter made them do it. I don't know if you guys caught that or not, but that was kind of the blame that was being shifted there, is that Twitter would freak out. That's a lazy explanation. Disney doesn't rewrite billion-dollar movies because of Twitter hashtags and Twitter rants. I mean, you have to be joking, right? They write what they think will sell globally. And I know that these guys don't want you to believe that, but it's true. Blaming Twitter as like the enemy of Disney is so vague and stupid and lazy. And it's like she's claiming here that corporate fear drives all creative decisions, which is also, there's no proof of that. In anything that she's establishing here, she's just saying it. And this is one of the things that frustrates me the most about this kind of content, is in order for it to be comprehensive, every video would need to include some sort of, I don't know, evidence or information that shows what they're saying is true. But they don't do that. They skip over that. And then they just start saying things. They start declaring things in their videos. And it's so frustrating from a standpoint of viewing this as in debunking these, because they just don't ever give their viewers any sort of like real information. It's like vibes-based content used as objective truth. Like like just a second ago, she used fallacies. They're motive fallacies. She's assigning intent without evidence between what the corporations do, what happens with Twitter. It's all culture war scapegoating. Before we continue the video, Disney is a profit-driven mega corporation. The things that they would primarily respond to would be market research, the audiences, domestic and globally. Merchandising is a big one. They make billions of dollars a year on merchandising. It's actually more profitable than most of the things they make, whether it be movies, TV shows, cartoons. Merchandising is more profitable than most of those things. Twitter backlash has almost zero measurable impact on box office numbers. And that's what they thrive on. They thrive on the fact that there's no metrics that can be pulled up to show that it's actually happening. So it becomes one of these conspiracy theory rabbit hole things that will just leave you going through more and more of their videos trying to find the truth. Anyway, let's continue.
And so being that I know the Reddit, people really, really love videos like this because apparently I'm so chock full of internalized misogyny that I fail to recognize the irony in my words.
I'm not even going to go that route. I could. You guys know I could. I could definitely call out things like that. But in this video, I'm going to try and focus primarily on just the subject matter. I'm not going to really dive into SnarkyJ as a content creator yet because this is really the first video that I've watched of SnarkyJ. So I'm really going to try and dive into whatever the arguments are being made in the video. And if we come back to her videos later after I establish how I feel about her as a content creator, once we watch this video, then it might get a bit more personal in dissecting who she is as a content creator. But right now, it's just all vibes. and fallacy arguments.
What I'm saying with this video is not that women should be weaker or that Disney should write weaker women. What I'm saying is that modern Disney women often feel like one personality trait or type instead of a human being, and they are all the same personality trait. And the other thing is that they all feel like slogans instead of character arcs. There's no story.
Talking about slogans while using phrases like Mary Sue and Girlboss as the foundational argument of your video is crazy, fam. It's crazy. You are doing sloganisms right now. I don't even know if it's a word, sloganisms.
To tell because the basic thing is strong female lead, and that's the only thing they want to be able to sell you.
I mean, do you have proof of that? I mean, again, literally just saying it doesn't mean that it's real. If I were to research any of these things, they're all vibes-based arguments. So I'm not going to find anything. That's why these videos fall apart for me. I don't do vibes-based content like this. When I say I don't do it, it's not that I don't make it or that I don't lean into it sometimes. It's that for me, I need more substance. So I'm hoping that in this video, we get something more than vibes.
About this movie. I'm gonna get into what Disney used to do so right, but before that, I really want to analyze what it is that they're getting wrong when they write women. There's basically a really easy pattern to find. They are hyper competent from moment one, like how Rey No Name Palpatine Skywalker is really good with a lightsaber and can pilot just about anything despite basically living in a desert junkyard for most of her existence. These characters are also rarely wrong. They are emotionally closed off, and above all, they need no one, and they learn nothing because by the end of their character arc, they usually come to find that the true power was within them all along, baby. They didn't need a team, they didn't need a man, they didn't need a friend, they didn't need faith. It was all right here. They just needed to unlock it, and you can apply that to pretty much any character you want. Well,
I've already established that that's not true. If you go back and you look at some of the more recent characters like Elsa, Moana, Maribel, even Raya, they're not those types of characters. But let's talk about Rey for a second, because I know that all the Star Wars people out there are like that. So Rey fails repeatedly. Repeatedly. She gets captured. Han gets killed. She nearly falls to the dark side. She's emotionally desperate to belong. These are all things that are like not perfect. And her competence is explained. She's had to struggle as a scavenger with her upbringing. She's also force sensitive. She has training. These are all things that we see in the movies. And if you go back and you look at other Star Wars things or even things in this genre, you will see that characters actually do, not just women, not just girl bosses and Mary Sues, but a lot of them fall into the same trope because it is not a new trope. It's not something that Disney created. It's not even something that's exclusive to women. For example, let's use Luke. Flies an X-Wing with no setup. Anakin builds a pod racer as a child. So what we have here is a double standard. This isn't an analysis of anything. And Rey isn't flawless. She's lonely. She's impulsive. She's wrong about who she is. If you're calling that learning nothing, then you're just ignoring the movie entirely because you have to push a narrative. Anyway, let's continue.
And the irony here is that they want to sell you these characters as empowering. They want women and young girls to look at them and feel empowered. But realistically, I fail to see the element of empowering when these characters are not allowed to be vulnerable. If every woman on screen...
I just proved that there's vulnerability in these characters. So this is, again, is just her saying... she's just saying things.
Is perfect. How am I ever supposed to feel empowered by
I also proved that Rey isn't perfect either, which was one of her examples that she named specifically.
them when I know I inherently am an imperfect person? If I cannot trust a strong female character to be fundamentally changed by her love for a tiny, delicious little creature like this, how am I supposed to want her on a t-shirt? And this whole thing was just a break to tell you that I needed to hold him for a second. Okay,
so perfect women aren't empowering is essentially what is being said here. Now, if you think about it for a second, it does sound reasonable. Like this seems like a real criticism. Vulnerability matters. Perfection isn't always relatable. But here's the problem. This premise is false. Modern Disney women are vulnerable, and I've already given examples for that. So what's happening here is SnarkyJ is arguing against a version of these characters that doesn't exist. So I don't disagree with the conclusion that vulnerability matters and perfection isn't necessarily relatable. Vulnerability definitely matters. The issue is that Disney already writes vulnerable women. So the critique is just an imaginary problem. This is just something where it's like cherry picking certain examples and then going, these are all the examples we have. This is the only thing that matters. And that's just not true. Let's continue.
Anyways, in my opinion, that strength derived from independence, and that independence that completely lacks connection, that to me isn't strength. It's actually isolation. And when it comes to people in real life that are that isolated and that independent and that headstrong, they're usually kind of sad and lonely.
Okay, so let me connect the dots here. Isolation. So this sounds like Star Wars. Independence leads to isolation, which leads to sadness. Did I get that right? So this is essentially what she's doing here. She's sneaking in a moral judgment disguised as concern. Did you catch that? Independence framed as unhealthy by default. This is bad. Independence and connection are not opposites. They don't cancel each other out. Plenty of characters that are independent are emotionally connected. So again, independence does not equal isolation. That's not psychology. It's just projection and it's moral judgment being snuck in to the argument here. So I see what you're doing, SnarkyJ. Nice try, but I caught it.
So now that we've talked about what Disney has gotten wrong in recent years, I want to talk about 3 characters that they got oh so right, including one of my favorite Disney characters of all time. And if you've been on this channel long enough, you might know who it is. It's not Lightning McQueen. I'm not including Lightning McQueen in an example of strong women written by Disney. You'll see who it is. We'll get around to that in just a few minutes. But first, here's a word from this video's sponsor. The first strong Disney woman I want to talk about is a character who really could have and should have been a Mary Sue, and yet wasn't. Of course, I'm talking about none other than Mulan, who really emphasizes the whole aspect of strength through failure. To sum it up quickly, if you need a refresher on Mulan's story, Mulan essentially disguises herself as a man to take her father's place in the war against the Hun, and she is an integral part of that war. And when we think about a story like that, right, she could have been so much of a girl boss Mary Sue type, and if they'd made the movie today—
I love the buzzwords again. Girl boss, Mary Sue, no explanation, which means it is literally speaking to a specific type of viewer. Like if you were to play this video for someone who doesn't live in Brainrotsville, they would have to be like, well, what does that mean? Mary Sue, girl boss, what does that mean? They wouldn't even get it. So this video isn't really made to cater to a larger audience. It's really specifically catered to the Brainrot audience.
Which I'm going to go ahead and acknowledge that there is a live action version of this movie. I never saw it. So if they made her a Mary Sue, you know I'm not talking about that version. I'm talking about the classic version, the animated one, okay? She could have been a Mary Sue. She could have been a girl boss. But right away, Mulan is not the strongest. She's not the fastest. And she's also not all that secure of herself. She does what she does because she's making the sacrifice so her dad doesn't have to go to war when he's walking on a cane and is probably going to be put on the front lines, you know, is like cannon fodder. And she's terrified the whole time that she's going to be found out. She's scared to go to war, but she does it out of love. She struggles and she fails for a long time. Granted, she's also with like a squad, a sort of motley crew of undesirables in the battle, and she does eventually kind of drive them up.
I'm letting this play out a little bit. I know I haven't interjected, much in this segment, but I want to let her get the entire as much of this, or I say entire, as much of this argument out before I rebut it, because I do have some thoughts on it, but let's let her finish.
With her, but she struggles the whole time. We very much see, like, this is a princess who has never had to fight, and we see her struggle, and that's so important, because if they made this movie today, she would just magically be really good at everything, and every man there would be oh so impressed by her. She spends the entire film earning respect, earning trust, and finally, when we see her achieve victory, she doesn't do it alone, and it feels that much more earned because we've watched her struggle in this very realistic, very valid way. And I think one of the most important parts here is that nobody just gives her a round of applause because she's so fearless and so brave. She's got to learn, she's got to adapt, and above all, she's got to get back up after humiliation, after failure, after betrayal. I mean, she really is a character that goes through it, and we go on this journey with her, a journey of resilience. And so Mulan isn't a great character because she's perfect. She's a great character because she grows powerful from personal growth. And that's what Disney gets wrong. They've basically thrown away the concept of personal growth in order to just sell us an already achieved dream.
Okay, we're gonna stop there. I think that's enough. So this is a Mulan, I guess, comparison to all, or I guess the modern type of Disney movies that she doesn't like, even though we've already established that most of them aren't what she claims they are. So let's see, this is like selective memory. Actually, first let's start out with what I think she got right here. So praising Mulan's struggle is fair. I think it's fair. And I do think that, you know, talking about the story and all the details of it, no issues with that whatsoever. But then claiming that modern Disney wouldn't make this kind of movie when I would argue they already did. So we have like Raya struggling and failing constantly. We have Moana, who nearly gives up. Mirabelle is humiliated repeatedly. So acting like she would just be made, like if Mulan was made in today's Disney, that she would magically just be good at everything, because you said Mary Sue, you said Girlboss, you said these buzzwords. There's zero evidence of that. Like, Mulan isn't a unique character because she struggles or she's struggling through things. She's one example in a long tradition that Disney has never stopped doing. That's just the one that you resonate the most with, and that's fine. We all have our favorites. But that doesn't mean that that story is entirely different from any other movie that Disney has made in recent times. It's selective memory. Again, let's continue.
Speaking of dreams, our next not so perfect but really fantastically written female character from Disney knows an awful lot about dreaming of her life outside of castle walls and rubbing lamps. I'm talking about Jasmine, who, yes, is the princess of the film, but the film is actually just still about Aladdin. And yet, in all of that, I think Jasmine still manages to steal the show in terms of being a complex character in the best ways. Jasmine is one of those characters that doesn't really come up in discussion like these because at the end of the day, she's still a princess, and I think modern day Disney likes to look down upon the princesses that are just princesses.
That's zero evidence. Is like no evidence whatsoever for that claim. This is what I love about these videos. It's just the complete lack of evidence to back up anything they're saying other than vibes. That's it. It's just all vibes.
They made Princess Moana, who is still like a leader and wants to be a warrior and goes off to sail. And it's not that there's anything wrong with that, but Disney tries to not make princesses that are just princesses anymore. And that's what Jasmine is. And yet, despite the fact that she is just a princess, she's actually quietly brilliant.
Well, I mean, so what you're arguing is you like just like literal princesses, and they're not making those things that you like anymore. And that is a valid thing to say. You can honestly say that about any form of media. They're not making this thing that I really loved anymore, and therefore I'm not really engaged with the modern stuff. But that doesn't mean it's bad. That doesn't mean they failed. That doesn't mean that they're no longer capable of doing good things. It simply means that you don't like the more modern interpretations of something. And this is what I struggle with so much with these channels, is they act like the things that have changed have ruined something that they loved in the past because they're not remaking those things anymore. And that's not the case. It's just an evolution of storytelling. It's in a genre or a period of time where they're using genres to tell stories about things that resonate with new ideas. It's not that they hate these things. This is what these guys want you to believe, is because they're telling different stories, they somehow hate it or they're incapable of doing it. They just want to do something different. It really just boils down to that. Let's let her continue.
This whole moment when Aladdin arrives there, and he's trying to charm the Sultan into letting him have her hand, and she shows up and says, I am not a prize to be won. And it's not this girl boss stance of, I don't need anybody. No, she has ideas about finding somebody, but she wants to be able to choose and make her own decisions. She's somebody that is advocating for her own agency. And despite this sort of headstrong thing about her that eventually lands her into trouble and introduces her to Aladdin in the first place, Jasmine is not some one-note independent girl boss. She's curious, she's open,
I should have like a girl boss counter on the screen. I really should. Because that's the only criticism that she keeps giving is girl boss, Mary Sue. Girl boss, Mary Sue. It is so lazy. This is such a lazy brain rot video. It really is.
willing to listen, and she is willing to fall in love. That's one of the important parts, because I think that Disney is choosing to tell young girls that falling in love or that wanting to fall in love somehow is a point of weakness.
Zero evidence of that. Zero. I feel, I believe is not evidence to back up a claim. It's just not. All right, let's let her finish the Jasmine segment.
When the only way that the human race works, and the whole thing that has kept the world turning for years, yeah, you could be a cynic and look at it and say, yeah, well, war has kept the world turning, but realistically, it's always been love.
So let me get this right. You are advocating for Disney to encourage children to get into relationships. That's the responsibility of Disney to do that? Again, I don't know SnarkyJ, but I know a lot of people that make this kind of content, and they usually don't want that kind of stuff in children's content. But I don't know. I'm not making any snap judgments. It's just kind of odd. Let's continue.
Makes more people love. That's at the core of the world. It's at the core of humanity, is connection with other people.
No, a fucking makes more people. Love is just love. Love can exist in all kinds of ways. Like, love doesn't always result in sticking a dick into a pussy. Like, I just, to really be like bold on it, that just gotta break it down. Like, literally, fucking doesn't always require love. Like, it can happen, but it doesn't always require love. This is just this is a dumb argument from her.
And Disney wants to tell young girls and women that ache for a connection, the need, the want, is somehow a weakness. And a character like Jasmine never looks at it that way. She doesn't want it to be forced upon her, but she wants to be with somebody, and she's willing to let Aladdin show her his world on a magic carpet ride. And what I think is great is that Jasmine doesn't lose strength by loving Aladdin. She doesn't need to win a battle by fighting. Near the end of the movie, when she's inevitably kidnapped by Jafar, she actually outsmarts him by using her feminine charm. I mean, in that scene, she literally manipulates him to buy Aladdin time. She is an active participant in the climax of the movie, and Disney didn't have to put a sable or a spear in her hand to show you that she was worth something. She knows her strengths, and she plays to them in order to help everything come together. And so what I love about Jasmine is that, like I said, she doesn't come up often in these conversations because she doesn't look strong enough. But she proves that strength is more complicated than that. You can be strong and kind at the same time. And
Okay, we're going to stop it there. I think that's the end of her Jasmine moment here. So, this is a sleight of hand argument that's being made here. I already talked about the weird shit about Disney should encourage children to get together and fuck, I guess. I don't know any other way to take that. That's the argument that's being made. Okay. But what's happening here, I believe, is that SnarkyJ is praising Jasmine for having her own agency and still having softness, and then is somewhat implying that modern Disney rejects romance. I think that was somewhere in there. But Disney still writes romance. Let's look at Frozen, for example. Anna's arc is literally about love. And Frozen is a massive film, a massive franchise. The movie Elemental, the entire movie is about romance. Right? So what changed isn't love is bad. It's like instant romance is bad, is essentially what they've gone for a longer, more layered take on what romance looks like now. So it's not so classic. So I don't think Disney removed love, at least using the examples that I gave here. They removed unearned love. And that's the difference. So it's not just love for the sake of love anymore, or to encourage reproduction of the human race. It's love that feels like it means something. And I think the issue with people like SnarkyJ is that they're not used to complex relationships. They want everything very simple, very easy to understand, because to them, that makes it palatable, it makes it packageable, it makes it easy to push out to consumers. Something that a lot of these guys don't want. They say they don't want stuff made to be consumed. They want actual stories. But here we have SnarkyJ advocating for just going back and doing stuff that's very simple and plain and easy to digest. Let's see what the next argument is.
Combinations of traits found in characters like Jasmine are basically non-existent now, especially when it comes to modern Disney writing.
Not true.
Now, babies and gentlemen, I want to talk about my personal favorite female Disney character of all time. In my opinion, this character is the gold standard when it comes to women written by Disney. And I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this, and most people would probably feel that Mulan is the gold standard. But I think that this character, for being from the 90s, is arguably the best example of a well-written modern woman that Disney has ever made.
Okay, before we go into this and she reveals who this is, I think we need to understand that not every single story that is written is going to be a home run. Let's just take that expectation off the table for a second. There are movies that come out, multiple movies a month, every single month. Not all of them are going to be the best of the best. Not all of them are going to be the most well-written movies you've ever watched. I think this idea of picking the best one and then holding everything else up to that standard like it needs to be at that level is a very unfair goalpost for any franchise. Should they strive to do those things? Yes. Are they always going to hit those marks? No. And that's okay. It's okay for you to attempt and not always nail it. In a world of 9s and 10s, you got to have some 6s and 7s when it comes to entertainment. That's just the reality of it. So let's see what her standard is, because I'm very curious which character she's going to talk about.
And of course, I am talking about none other than Megara from Hercules.
Oh.
Megara works on so many different levels. Right off the bat, when we meet her, she calls herself a damsel in distress. And yet she never really feels like a damsel in distress. When she refers to herself that way, she's being both ironic and self-aware. It's very clear that this person has a chip on her shoulder and was not born yesterday. She can handle herself. And that's what I think makes her interesting. And so when you talk about a character like that, you might think, oh, okay, so we're leaning into that girl boss, that badass, that independent woman who does...
Oh, I can't wait to dismantle this one. Please finish so I can dismantle this one. I already know what I want to say, but let's hear what you have to say about this.
Doesn't need anybody. But realistically, despite this irony and the sarcasm and the headstrong attitude, she still very much needs Hercules to get her out of that situation. And I can hear the Reddit people ruminating on this right now. Oh my god, she only likes Megara because she needs a man. Megara doesn't need a man, actually. And the fact that Megara doesn't need a man and doesn't want one is arguably one of the things that makes her the most interesting character on this list, and perhaps one of the most interesting ones that Disney has ever written. Oh god, this is gonna be good.
please finish this, Snarky Jay. This is going to be so good.
Explain why in just a second. But the beautiful thing about Megara is that she has a really fun and unique personality when it comes to a lot of Disney women. She's incredibly sarcastic, she's incredibly funny, she's pretty snarky, but above all, she is somebody who is guarded yet not cruel. And the reason for her being so guarded is painted beautifully within the context of the movie. If you need a quick refresher on Megara out of the context of basically just being Hercules' love interest, essentially she works for Hades because she made a really, really big decision way before the events of this movie. She was in love with a man, and she gave her soul to Hades in order to save that man's life. She made Hades a deal so that she could save him. And this man, he turned around and ran off with somebody else, leaving Megara to essentially be a slave to Hades. And not just that, he left her totally heartbroken and quite untrusting of men from the beginning. She tells Hades, first off, that she doesn't buy Hercules' Wonder Boy act, and she seems really suspicious of his whole deal. So
this is really funny to me because I cannot believe she even included this segment. This is really, really funny. Oh my gosh, hurry up and finish with this. I have so much I want to say.
Megara is somebody that's operating with trauma. And the beautiful thing about this is that she falls for Hercules anyways. And this is not a point of weakness. This is actually a sign of great strength from this character, because you think about that, right? Think about yourself. Think about people in our daily lives. We are essentially behaving on the basis of all the things that have happened to us, regardless of the fact that I think a lot of us would prefer to not have baggage. We have baggage, and we take that baggage with us as we walk through life. And so Megara is somebody who is operating with this incredible amount of trauma. She's not just somebody who went on a couple bad dates and got catfished a few times. This is not her deal. Megara sold her soul to the god of the underworld and is enslaved as a result. And the man who she made this sacrifice for left her, which is arguably one of the worst origin stories. If I were Megara, I don't think I'd ever want to see a man even on a glazed plate. And
so this is really interesting. We haven't gotten there quite yet because she's being very long-winded on this, but this entire segment is going to dismantle all the previous stuff she said. I will explain why in a second. I just wanted to pause to interject for a moment because she's being very long-winded here. I appreciate how comprehensive this is, but I really, really need her to wrap this up because this is so funny to me.
So yes, she's doubtful of Hercules, and yet she's curious about him. And when she starts to learn that his behavior, his kindness, that naive charm about him, when she figures out that all of this is real, she falls for him. And one of the best things, which almost feels like a throwaway line, or like the only impact of the line is because Hades says it, when she's talking to Hades about Hercules, she says he's different, he wouldn't hurt anyone, and he tells her he's a guy. It's Hades that has this the opinion of men, probably because he doesn't really like humanity all that much. But Megara is so willing to throw away the entirety of her experience, that betrayal, and what her existence is now, which is arguably really shitty, being enslaved by a malevolent god. She throws all of that away, and she lets those walls of snark and sarcasm just completely fall, so that she can allow herself to fall for Hercules, somebody that she feels stands for more than that. And through that is the only reason Hercules wins in this film. Megara throws herself in the way to save Hercules, and it's through that sacrifice play that she is injured, and therefore he regains his strength and is able to defeat Hades and all the horrors he had unleashed upon humanity. And through that, Hades then saves Megara and chooses a life with her. But without her making the sacrifice play, I've said this in so many videos, and I will continue to say it because I think there is always somebody on the other side of this screen that needs to hear it. I'm a big Optimus Prime fan, I've said that so many times, and Peter Cullen has a quote that he says, "You have to be strong enough to be gentle. And that's the thing that I think Megara does beautifully. She is somebody who has no reason to trust again. She is somebody that has no reason to love.
All right, we're gonna pause there. Okay, that's a lot. I got to get into this. It's you've been going on for too long, SnarkyJ. Hush for a second. So this is a really strong segment of SnarkyJay's video. Meg is well written. There is trauma. There's sarcasm. There's guarded vulnerability. These are all true things. Meg literally is sarcastic, independent, and emotionally closed off at first. But here's the contradiction. These are all traits that SnarkyJ has criticized throughout this video. These are all things that she's complained about. So it's not the Girlboss and Mary Sue traits that are a problem, as she would have had you believe earlier, that those pejoratives are just very easy to understand problems within storytelling. Remember when I said that she doesn't really explain what those things are? Well, she doesn't. Therefore, we're just supposed to understand that they're negatives no matter what. So Meg here proves the problem isn't Girlboss or Mary Sue traits. It's the writing quality. It's the execution of these things, which makes all this culture war framing that SnarkyJ is doing and all these channels do unnecessary. You don't need buzzwords and slogans if you're not going to be consistent in those things being applied in a way that makes sense within your own personal narrative. If you're going to keep saying girl bossing and Mary Sue's are bad, then you can't praise a character that has every single trait that could be assigned to a girl boss character and go, but this one is good. Because then you have introduced an exception to the rule. And once you have done that, you cannot have a category that is exclusive. These folks would have you believe that Mary Sue's and girl bosses are exclusive categories where it must always equal something negative. Again, a pejorative. Once you have introduced a character that has all of those traits, all of those things that would make a girl boss, once you introduce that into your argument and say, but this character is a girl boss done well, then that screaming and crying about girl bosses means absolutely nothing. It is unnecessary and it holds no weight whatsoever. So here we are almost at the end of SnarkyJay's video, and her final, I'm guessing this is her final one because she saved it for the big boombastic end here. This final example that she used literally dismantles all of her previous arguments. So let's see where she goes from here, because I think you painted yourself into a corner, but let's see where you go.
Again. And yet she is strong enough that she allows herself to be gentle and she allows herself to love. And that's a trait that is pretty much common in the other two characters that I spoke about and in a lot of Disney characters. For some reason, we're living in an era of revisionist history where people want to tell you, oh my God, Disney was writing nothing but brainwashed women, and the problem with society is that all the princesses were stupid and they were throwing away their lives for men. And if you go back and you actually...
Okay, so this is another straw man argument. No serious critic claims that old Disney women were nothing but stupid. That's a caricature of criticism. Show me an example. Give me an example of a critic worth their weight that has made that claim. The reality is that real critiques have been, limited roles in this category. Narrow options. Romance being the only destiny. Not a destiny that could be real. Not a destiny that could actually happen. But being the only option. Singular. One and only. Criticism of old Disney was about range. Not hatred. Not women being stupid. That's not the actual criticism. That is bad faith. Pretending otherwise, like you're doing here, is dodging real conversation. Because once you've established that you're willing to engage in a bad faith argument, or foundation to your argument, I should say, once we've established that that's what you're doing, there's nowhere to go from there. That's pretty much it. You've argued yourself into a corner.
Watch movies like Cinderella, like Beauty and the Beast, like The Little Mermaid, you will find that there is so much more to these films and so much more to these female characters than just the fact that they were princesses and fell in love. And I think when we look at these three specifically, Mulan is straight up growth through failure and struggle. Jasmine is a beautiful combination of strength and cleverness and softness and love. And Megara paints a perfect picture of guarded vulnerability and sacrifice that comes from inner change. And a lot of that ties directly into what modern Disney women lack. They lack internal conflict because they were always perfect and they're always going to be better than you. They lack romantic openness because why would a woman ever need or want a man? And above all, they lack the ability to need others without losing their agency because Disney thinks that needing others is inherently weak, which is kind of funny considering that they've been putting out Avengers movies for 1,000,000 years.
By the way, again, all of that is vibes-based stuff. There's no concrete proof of that. It is simply her personal opinion on it. I just need people to understand that. This is what frustrates me the most about this content, is they're not producing objective reality. They're doing subjective vibes-based reality, and then other people just take this as like gospel. They start repeating it. They start going on social media and saying these things. This is probably the biggest issue I have with this kind of content.
None of those work if there's only the one guy. Like if Thanos descended upon Earth and our only dude out there was Captain America, I would like to see how our favorite patriotic shield throwing gym bro succeeds against a planetary demon with an infinity gauntlet if there was nobody else around. I'm pretty sure the grape would just stomp on him and the movie would be over in 3 minutes. People need others. We need colleagues, we need peers, we need friends, we need connections, we need
I've already proven that multiple modern Disney princesses or women in movies represent that. I've already talked about it. This is just, again, repeating the propaganda.
Love that is fundamentally important, and Disney seems to have forgotten all of that because they don't look at women as people. Suddenly we're just supposed to be symbols, and if we're not just symbols, it's because we're not perfect.
Okay, hold on. SnarkyJ, weren't you just using women as examples of symbols of things like romance and love and power? Like, you were the one comparing the women that you were using as examples as symbols of things. That's what you were just doing. And now you're accusing Disney of doing that? That's a huge contradiction. Huge. You're claiming Disney doesn't trust audiences with nuance, yet you have films like Encanto with like generational trauma, emotional trauma, moral ambiguity, non-villain conflicts exist in films like Encanto. If Disney didn't trust audiences with nuance, films like Encanto wouldn't exist. So I just, these arguments don't add up, SnarkyJ. They don't add up.
It can't not be perfect, which is arguably way more misogynistic and anti-feminist than like most of the shit they think they're fighting against. Today's modern woman is written to do nothing but to prove a point, and the characters that I mentioned in this video actually feel real. And so the sad part and the important part is that Disney didn't start writing women differently because the times changed and they needed to get with them. They forgot how to write women because they stopped trusting audiences to understand nuance. And
bullshit. This is where we're going to wrap up the video. I don't think it's going to get any better from here. Look, this isn't about writing quality alone. It's about, discomfort with changing archetypes. SnarkyJ is asking for vulnerability, but only when that vulnerability is familiar to her. It has to be a very specific type of vulnerability that SnarkyJ deems appropriate, that SnarkyJ thinks is the correct way for women to be vulnerable. And last time I checked, no community is monolithic. So you're not looking at people through the lens of like, oh, this person has the only opinion that matters because of X, Y, Z. No, this is just SnarkyJay's personal opinion based on the movies that she loved when she was growing up. So the problem here isn't strong women. It's that SnarkyJ keeps confusing bad writing with feminism and nostalgia with depth. Disney hasn't forgotten how to write women. Some people just stopped watching closely, like Snarky Jay.